Hello, Dental team listeners. I am so excited to be here with you today. I have pulled in the one and only Britt. We still need a really strong nickname for you,
Yeah.
Britt, but I'm just excited to be here with you today. And I love Britt. People call me Tiff. I love Britt. I feel like it's just like rolls off the tongue. So we'll stick with that for now. But we're here in the new year. I'm excited to have these conversations. I've pulled you for a few podcasts today, and I just think that you are going to be so stellar at the content that we're going to talk about. And doctors, I hope you're here to freaking learn. Britt, one of her nicknames is No BS Britt, so welcome to that. And I say that today because we're going to be just talking a lot of business in a lot of the podcasts that we're recording today, but especially this one and some planning for the year. We're in 2025 now, so I want to make sure you guys are just totally prepped and planned for it. So Britt, how are you on this fine, beautiful morning in Arizona today?
I'm great. It's a sunny day every day pretty much here, so you gotta love it. I love that there's a few nicknames out there, but I don't like Spiffy Tiffy is such a good one that I don't know if the rest of us will get one that's like that same level, which
I
is
know.
deserved, but yeah. So I've got a few, but nothing quite like Spiffy Tiffy.
I know. You had to come in early.
I
The
know.
nickname game started earlier than everyone else got here. That must be what it is, right?
Some years. Eventually we'll get there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think things just, my grandma called me Tiffy my whole life growing up. I was Tiffy. And so I think things just rhyme with Tiffy better. It's like a hard end at Brit or Tiff. So it was easy to monopolize on that one. But it is always sunny. I feel like this year I decided, or not this year, I guess last year, I told my son, I said, I think we just need to stop pretending like we live in a state or a space of life that actually has a winter.
Yeah.
Um, People who live in the tropics, they just realize, guess what? It's just going to be tropical. Like we're not
Yep.
going to get a winter, and that's okay. And I think in Arizona and Phoenix, at least, like that's the life we need to start living. Stop pretending like it's going to be sweater weather. It's not going to happen. So
Or
here we
say,
are.
oh, it's warmer this year.
Yeah,
Every year we say oh, it should be cooler. Exactly.
yeah.
It is what it is, and you know what? I'm happy for it. I am perfectly fine not having freezing weather. So
I agree. I agree. The 70s in December, I will take it. It's fine. We'll just see what the
absolutely.
summer looks like. So we'll chat back around on that when the
We'll
summer
sound a little
comes.
different then, but it's fine. It's short. It's short.
Yeah, yeah. I love it. But this kind of, honestly, all of it kind of goes into it itself and the plans and the prepping and looking forward. And we are in the business of constantly looking at where we're going. But you also have to look at where you've been. And so in order to make sure your 2025 is super, super strong, you guys, we kind of wanted to revisit some of the pieces that we chatted about towards the end or towards the last quarter, Q4 of 2024. Some of those strategic planning tips and tricks that we had given you back then, we want to make sure that you guys actually implemented them and then look at, okay, implemented, now how do we use them? So I brought Britt here because Britt, I think your business brain is brilliant, and I want to make sure we don't miss any of the pieces. So guys, I know we chatted about this. It might be a review, but I really want you to dig deep. Sometimes when you re-listen to a podcast or when you listen to something that has similar information, you're like, oh gosh, I didn't hear that last time, or oh, this means more to me today than it did when I listened to it 3 months ago because I'm in a different space. So I really want you to dive deep. I want you to listen in. One of the biggest pieces I think practices can miss is the opportunity to look at the stats and really, really look at where you've been, where you're trying to go, but where you are right now. And Britt, correct me if I'm wrong, I think 99.9% of the people who come to us, the clients, the potential clients, the future clients, the listeners are here saying, we need systems, and dental A team is here and to build systems. And we come in and I'm like, gosh, you have so many systems. Like the reason that you feel chaotic is because you don't know where to start. Right, Britt? So how do we help them? I really want them to learn how to track trends, know where to start, know what like 2025's focus needs to be. Because systems, like you got a whole dental practice, you've got multiple departments within your dental practice, and to say systems is quite overwhelming. It's like, trying to pull a raindrop out of a rain cloud. It's just not possible, and it causes a lot of chaos and confusion. And I think narrowing that down helps people to be able to see what needs to come next. What's that next step? So, Britt, You do work with a lot of clients, and you've worked with a lot of clients over the last 3 years that you've been here with us. Thank you so much. A little longer than that now, but almost four. But how do you help them to really see that space, especially going into the new year to say, okay, what do I need to do this year to be super successful?
Yeah, and I think, Tiff, it comes from planning for systems, yes, and also our big picture like ultimately shapes our priorities. So like that's why I think even in Q4 we harp so much on like, all right, what's happened this year? What do you want to do next year? What are our goals for next year? Because having a path or having something we're shooting for helps us to prioritize some things. For
Mm,
example, let's say great, we want to grow 15% next year, right? We've got the space, we know our schedule's not full, we want to grow our revenue, our collections by 15%. Then it's like, all right, then what's going on that's keeping us from getting there? So then we like walk it back, and those are some of the important stats that we need to set goals around and make sure we're tracking. If our schedule is not full, then it's like, all right, do we have enough patients to fill the schedule? Do we not have enough patients? Do we need to get more? Is it a marketing thing? Is it just better
yeah,
scheduling and follow up on our end? And that's going to start to shape some of the systems. So, like with this example, let's say our schedule is not full. All right, do we have block scheduling, and how are we following up with people who don't have appointments? Those would be two systems that we would start with to get things rolling in the right direction to set us up for success in 2025 if you've got a
yeah.
growth goal like that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you narrowed it down from big to small. And that's what the trends will show us. And the mark that I think is truly missed, right, is seeing the bigger picture, like you said, but on a small level, which sounds confusing and contradictory. And you're like, how do you go, like you're saying big, but you're saying small. When we're looking at those big pieces, when we're tracking them, and I do love, this is like a side tangent. I do love the companies that come in and they pull your stats for you, right? So you've got an outside source and you log in and you can see all your stuff. You guys know what I'm talking about. There's multiple different companies and different systems out there. I do love those and analytics companies and resources, but I really, really love too for you guys to know the actual numbers and to know how to pull them yourself. Even if you're using an analytics company, I want you to be able to see both of them because I believe that if you have your hands in it yourself, you're soaking in the knowledge. So either way, I want you to just verify, clarify, verify all the pieces. But having a space, I know we've got a lot of our clients, if not all of them by now, on our scorecard system. It's a simple. Well, simple is probably the wrong word to use there, but it's simple for our clients. It was a labor of love for us, but it's an Excel spreadsheet, and I love going old school with those kind of simple tools like Excel, because I think if we can get all of that data and metrics onto one screen, right? Even in a lot of the analytics, like you flip in between screens and you don't always see how one trend leads into another trend, or one metric can negatively or positively affect a metric that it seems like it wouldn't. So you might have hygiene data on one screen, right? Flip to another screen and you've got your production collections, and then another screen you've got your AR. Well, guess what? There are different systems within each one of those screens, right? That affect all of them. And when we've got them all in one space, you guys, and you're looking at them, your brain is like, oh, wait, this is a puzzle. Let me put this together. And you start seeing how they lead up or lead down into one another. So, Britt, like you're saying, our schedule is not full, right? This is a common statement from dental practices. My schedule's not full, or I have high cancellations. And it's very easy to be like, oh my gosh, I have all of the answers for that. Like, Britt could come up with like 15 different things for both of those problems. Schedule's not full, high cancellations. We can tackle it all. And I could implement, and Britt could implement 30 systems today, but the question is, are those systems the actual problem, or are we kind of like putting a band-aid over a bigger issue that's underlying that we may not be seeing underneath, right? So I love, Britt, that you said that. Like, great, let's look at block scheduling. And you didn't say let's do block scheduling. You said, do we have block scheduling in place? Because, practices do that. Practices know how to do it. There's a million freaking podcasts. We're not the only company who does block scheduling, number one. And we have so many podcasts on block scheduling. So a lot of people are doing it. So then we dig into, okay, how are we doing the block scheduling instead of just saying, this is how you should be doing it. Because I do think that's a mark that a lot of people overlook as well. You know, coaches come in and they're like, well, this is how I want you to do it. Well, your way
Mhm.
might be working. It might be
Mhm.
something else. So really digging into those pieces. So Britt, as you're looking at these scorecards with your clients, and we've used analytics companies, we still do, right? We have analytics that we use from companies, and we have clients who use different companies. What is it that you look for the most, and like big overarching, that these practices and these doctors can really start keying into, that show a space that, like, I want growth this year? That could mean anything. What are some overarching numbers that you like to track with your practices that will help them key into their focus this year?
Yeah, and I'll go through some of those numbers, and we want both like leading and lagging, right? So, for example, if I want to hit 15% growth in revenue, tracking that revenue is going to be a lagging measure. So, we need to work on, all right, what are some leading things to get us to that end goal that are going to be helpful to track and see what's going on? Another reason for tracking is, one, if we're implementing a system or adjusting a system, uh, feelings are, what is it, feelings are fleeting and like numbers are facts, whatever that saying is, but the
Hmm.
numbers actually will tell you, one, did you implement something that's actually having the impact you want it to have, and number two, if we shifted something, like, is it shifting it in the right direction for us? So is it useful or not? And
Yeah.
sometimes there's things, right, that we'll implement that are so cumbersome and like it doesn't do anything, then it's like, why are we doing it, right? It should be
Yeah.
easy and it should be effective at the end of the day. So that's kind of my little plug for also tracking numbers, is one, knowing where we're at, and two, knowing if the things that we're implementing are having the impact we want them to have. So some important ones, you're gonna have your big picture ones, right? And that's, you'll notice my brain thinks big to little. That's just kind of how I think. Where's the end goal we want to get to? And then what are the things that build up to that top most important thing? So if it's revenue, right, then of course production and collection. We're only going to collect as much as we produce, and we've got to make sure that we're collecting everything that we actually do the work for and can have the potential to collect. So
Yeah.
that's going to be one. And then it's like, all right, next level beyond that, what leads into those two things? Production is going to be case acceptance, how we're scheduling, right? Those are going to lead up to that production. And then on the collection side, it's like, all right, what's our AR? Where are all our buckets at? What's sitting out there? What are we not getting collected from patients that are going to be some of the big pieces? And then you can kind of walk it down from there, and great, track by provider, track by hygienist. And then what are the other things? What's our SRP that's going to feed to our production? What's our fluoride that's going to be feeding to our production? And what are doctors diagnosing, right? Because
Yeah.
we're, the buckets are, right, we're only going to make as much as we ever diagnose,
Yeah.
and we only are going to make as much as we actually like get scheduled and complete from what we diagnose, and
Yeah.
then we've got to collect on the things that we actually complete. So we kind of work our way down that way. So those are some of my favorite ones, Tiff, and looking ahead can be super helpful. What are we scheduled to next week, just to get team members looking ahead? And if we're not scheduled to go, then it should spur a plan of, okay, then what do we need to do to get next week's schedule to go? Or if there's holes in hygiene, what are we going to do to get those holes filled?
Yeah. Yeah. And what you just said right there too, like all of that, I want everyone to take all of that and figure out how you can implement those pieces, or what you're not looking at, maybe like what have you not been paying attention to that we can add in, not replace, but add into the metrics that you're looking at this year. But Brett, what you just said is, if we're not scheduled to go next week, what's our action items now?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of practices, get stuck in the lag measures. We know our lead measure. We know we're supposed to make $250,000 each month, right? So that's our lead measure. Our lead measure is, what are we supposed to produce and collect? How many new patients are we supposed to have? And then the first week of every month, we look back and we say, did we do that last month? And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we did, right? Sometimes we didn't. And if we're not tracking it more frequently, like you said, if we're not looking at next week, what's next week's lead measure based on last week's lag measures,
Mm-hmm.
we have to alter them sometimes. If last week or the week before we were down, that impacts us moving forward. So then we
Mm-hmm.
get to the last week. Sometimes I hear office managers really rallying. They're like, okay, guys, we got 3 days left and we need $30,000 in addition to what we already have on the schedule. And people are like, you want us to add 10 grand a day? What are you talking about? Like, yep, we need six
To get
Invisalign cases.
We can
Like,
do it, guys, right? Like, come on.
yeah, we got this, right? But what if 15 days ago you were like, hey, we need $2,000 every day, right? Instead of 3 days, 30,000. Like, how do we make sure, that we're looking at those things far enough ahead, but also looking at the backside? And I think you keyed into it there on the weekly basis. So making sure doctors that, and this is how the scorecard works. We have it working off of a monthly, but also a weekly. The weekly will feed into the monthly for that purpose because we want to be able to see the trends within the weeks. We want to be able to predict what we need successfully so that hitting goals is easy. When I put practices on these kinds of metrics, these weekly metrics, and I train a lot, Britt does too, we train a lot of office managers on scorecards like this because it's the easiest way to learn how the numbers work and how the small changes, like you said, Britt, affect those numbers so drastically. Sometimes you're like, gosh, dang it, our collections stinks and we've got cancellations all over the place. And so an office manager might be like, okay, guys, implement a $75 fee for every cancellations, black and white. They cancel, they get $75 fee. And then all of a sudden, it's like, that didn't help either one of them. We've got patients in an uproar. And next month, we realize we attritioned out 10 patients because of fees. Like, so we might be too dramatic or too drastic in a systems implementation if we're not watching the rest of what's happening as well. So if you start to see the trends within the week, you might notice, like, you might even start paying attention, like, what was this week, right? We had high cancellations, but guess what? Maybe it's spring break and maybe parents forgot. So then maybe the metric we need to look at is how far out the frequencies of our confirmations are. Are we giving them enough notice and enough reminder notice for times like this when it's spring break rather than like, nope, cut it. People suck. $75 across the board. We're doing it. And it's like, we weren't looking closely enough to the smaller trends within or the things that are sometimes hidden, like a break that we don't think about.
Yeah.
So watching it on that weekly basis, I think sincerely helps. With the AR, Britt, that's a huge piece that I think doctors, I know they don't get trained on. Like they don't know. We barely know, right? I'm like, we were trained by other people, and now we have all of the knowledge. But most front office people have been trained by other people. And now it's like, yes, dental team, please teach me my AR because now
Yep.
we know, right? What are the big pieces that doctors should be watching on a weekly basis when it comes to the AR? What do you train your doctors to look for?
Yep. And with AR, you want to look at the buckets, right? And buckets mean what's current 0 to 30 days, then what's 31 to 60, and you look at it in 30-day chunks. So you can see how things are trending. Again, with numbers, right? That's another piece of tracking it regularly is to see trends and what's trending, what direction are we heading. AR is a big one, right? We want
Yeah,
most of that money that's due to us within the next 30 days because it should mostly be insurance. We should have collected from patients their estimated portion at least. And so it should be insurance. And then from there, right, 0 to 60 days, okay, maybe some claims take us a little bit longer to get paid. So like there's going to be a little chunk in there. And then 60 to 90, we shouldn't have as much. And by 90 plus, we really shouldn't have hardly anything, 5% or less really sitting in there. And so with doctors, one, knowing how much is in each bucket, and then you can kind of see what insurance company was it? Was it United that had an issue this year? And you saw everybody's buckets go from 0 to 30. Oh, now there's a big chunk in 30 to 60, and
hmm
now there's a big chunk in 60 to 90 until that got resolved and the money's coming in. So you can kind of watch where that bolus happens. And if there's a bolus moving along into getting older, there's something happening that we need to address that's causing that to happen.
Totally agree. And you're right, though. You had that big insurance thing that happened this year with multiple companies. And then I think that was the one that got super hit. But also, I've had clients that have tracked it weekly, monthly, all those pieces, and started realizing that they had payment plans that were lapsing that they didn't realize before. So I do not advocate, I know Dental Team does not advocate in-office payment plans, you guys.
No,
I hate them
don't
for
do
this reason. They get lost. You're not a bank, like you're a provider, a service provider. So provide the services and get paid for what you do. If you need options for payment plans, please call us. Just let us know.
it.
Hello at
Payment if you're
thedentalteam.com.
option. prepayment's the option. They can
Exactly.
push the prepayment and get it done once it can be paid for.
Exactly. I always say, let me help you build a savings account and we will save it here for you and then we can get your treatment when you're done. But I had a lot of patients that, or a lot of practices that realized all of a sudden like it wasn't necessarily just the insurance companies. We started really looking at it on a super fine scale because of what happened with the insurance. But then they're like, wait a second, Tiff, a lot of this is patient. And I'm like, because you've not been looking at it, right? We've not tracked it like this on this kind of a scale. So these are the pieces, you guys, that really start to jump out. These are the things that I think you guys are waking up in the middle of the night, like, oh my gosh, what if this is a thing, right? And you're like, give me a system. Like, you have the systems. This is the system. Like, track the trends. Track what's happening, track where you're going, track where you've been so you can see where you need to go. So you know where you're going, you know where you've been. Now, do we need to add anything to where you're going in order to hit goals? Make sure
Mm-hmm.
your money is accounted for. Um, Call us when you need systems, guys. KPIs, key performance indicators, scorecards that track trends, and having people in your back pocket that are there to help you. Whether it's us, a consulting company, a coach, a friend, whomever it is, also having your team members on your side. So who's filling in this information and has your back there?
Mm-hmm.
Those are my biggest to-dos for your 2025. You guys don't overcomplicate it. It's really easy to overcomplicate it. It's really easy to try to tackle too much at one time. I want you guys to pull your data, pull your numbers. Where are you trying to go and which metric needs to be dialed first? So first quarter, which metric do we need to dial up in order to push you towards those goals? Britt mentioned earlier in the podcast, it might be billing. It might be marketing. It might be that you need more new patients. It might be scheduling. Like, where is it that you're low in all of the different areas within your trend so you can twist that dial, ramp it up, and then watch the other ones and see how those trends do so you can pick your next one. Britt, brilliant brain, brilliant Brit, that's what I'm gonna call you today. Brilliant brain Brit. Thank you so much for all of the input and all of the work that you've put in. You helped me a ton with that scorecard for our clients. So thank you so much. I cannot wait to have everyone on that ding dang scorecard. It's going to be incredible. And you guys, if you're a client of ours, you're not on the scorecard yet, reach out to your consultant. Make sure that you've got all the data, you've got all the meetings and all the pieces together for that. If you're not yet a client, we can't wait to meet you. And if you're a forever podcast listener, then freaking rock out, text us, email us, ask us what you need. If you need help with these things, we're always here for all of you guys, no matter what your status is. Thank you so much. Reach out, hello@thedentalneedteam.com. Drop us a 5-star review. We can't wait to hear from you guys and hear how amazing your 2025 is going.